Hello.
Good afternoon.
Hi there. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Oh, good. We've got a few more people on admitting.
Okay, I'll come back in just a minute.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Susan.
Hey there. How are you, Logan?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, thanks. I've got a couple more people I'm admitting to the class, so give me a second here. Gerard is joining. Kenny, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
What's happening with Gerard? He's trying to join. We'll give it another minute, then we'll get started.
Hi.
Oh, got another one.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is today the class on the sale and listing agreement part one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Okay, I don't know, I lost somebody. Okay, here we go. We're trying again. Got one more person to admit, then we'll get started. Okay. Gerard, you made it in? Oh, there you are. Okay, welcome.
Hi, Gerard. It's fancy seeing you here again.
I got Zachary coming in. Okay. Well, welcome. Welcome to Firms Mastery. We'll have a little kind of an introduction and then we'll get started. Today, we're going to be covering purchase and sale agreements, the first half of the form. This is the first of 4 classes given in the same order each month for the Firms Mastery series. 4 classes every Wednesday, the first 4 Wednesdays of the month between 2 and 4. This first one, we cover the first part of the purchase and sale. Next Wednesday, we'll cover the second half of the purchase and sale. And the third Wednesday, we do commonly used addenda. And the fourth Wednesday is the inspection forms and process. So glad to have all of you here. If you have any questions, please do ask. You don't have to wait until the end. welcome your participation. And remember that you do get 2 clock hours for each class once you have finished all 4 of the classes. And Goldie, who's the office manager, sends those out, those certificates out, and you can apply those toward your continuing education requirements. Today, though there are a number of forms for purchase and sales, including 21, which is for residential property, 20, which is multifamily, 23 is manufactured homes, 28 is condominiums, and 25 is vacant land. All of them are pretty much the format, same format. So we're going to use the form for 21 because that's kind of the most commonly used form. And we'll cover items 1 to 8 today on the form. So I will switch over so that you guys can actually look at the form as I'm going over it. Oh, I have a message here. Oh, good. Yeah, nice about the credits. Okay. There was a landmark case called Colton versus Heritage House that tried to stop realtors from writing contracts. However, the Washington State Supreme Court ruled that realtors can write contracts provided that we are filling in the blanks on forms that have been approved or created by attorneys. We are not allowed to write our own contracts. That would be practicing law without a license, and we are not allowed to do that. Remember too that you have to represent one or both parties. You can't just write up a contract for a fee. Again, that would be practicing law without a license. So believe it or not, that's going to come up. Some friend or family member is going to say, oh, I already have a buyer for this property. Can't you just do the paperwork for us as a favor? You do have to represent someone. So keep that in mind when you are fielding that kind of question, and you're always welcome to call me
Susan,
and discuss.
we can't see your screen if you're screen sharing.
Okay.
All it says is KW training host has started screen
Oh,
sharing, but
okay.
it doesn't like show the screen.
Okay, let me try this. Can you see the form?
I can now, yes.
Okay, awesome.
Thank
I
you.
thought maybe you could see me in the interim, but evidently not. Okay, so here is our wonderful form. So remember that you are essentially practicing law for the purpose of filling in the blanks. That's all we're authorized to do. So we are held to a standard of skill and care in completing these forms. So good for all of you for attending the class and expanding your knowledge of how to properly fill out the forms and avoid pitfalls and errors that might cost your client money or render a contract void, voidable, or unenforceable. So even with the scrutiny of attorneys in preparing these pre-printed forms, if you don't understand the forms and what the consequences could be of filling them out incorrectly, you might accidentally be throwing your client under the bus. So we're going to talk about, some problem areas and explanations of the significance of each of the items to really deepen your understanding of the significance of the language. So let's start out line 1. Who here has already written a purchase and sale contract up? Has anybody? Okay, reminder, in your new agent handbook, there are practice transactions, and I strongly urge you to write up a purchase transaction if you're working with a mentor or a coach. They can help you with that. It's something I learned early on. I think Pam said it in a class, that if you don't practice on each other, you're going to be practicing on your client. And you sure don't want to be writing your first contract at 8 o'clock at night and never having done one before, because there are an awful lot of blanks and boxes to check, and even experienced agents do miss things occasionally. And that I will say it's a lot easier to do it right the first time than to go back and try to correct a mistake or write an addendum that covers some kind of omission or error. So as a new agent, you're working with a mentor. They should be looking at your contracts before they go out for your clients to sign. And as a new agent, we didn't have a mentor program there, but I worked with my broker pretty much exclusively the first year, and I would always feel a lot more confident when I had another set of experienced eyes on my contract before it went out for my clients to acknowledge and sign. So line 1, we've got the date, number 1. And here this is just a reference point. This is the date that you're writing the contract. It's not the closing date, not the expiration date, not a contingency date. It's just today's date. It's not the date of a mutual acceptance. The MLS number, this is very helpful to put this in if you're creating your transaction in Transaction Desk. Put in the correct MLS number, then it's going to auto-populate a lot of information for you from the listing. So make sure you get the correct number there. And I want to say too, but before you're writing your purchase and sale up, it's really helpful to get a trio or a head start packet of information on the property from the title company so that you have general public information handy, and you can keep that on file along with the listing printout and your CMA. And if you have any issues later on, this information that you have shared with your client and have in your file and command is going to be very, very helpful. By the way, a trio consists of a property profile, a legal description, and a map. And it doesn't hurt to also check the tax records for the property that you are writing the offer on, and make sure that the name of the seller on the tax records is the same as the name that's on the listing. Likewise, you want to make sure that the legal description that is uploaded to the listing matches the one that you've got from the title company. It's not unheard of for somebody to upload an incorrect legal description to a listing. Maybe they're working on several things at once, or maybe they just select the wrong file to upload when they are, putting that in the supplement section of their listing. So make sure you've got the correct legal description. It's really important because that defines the property. And by the way, title companies insure by legal description, not by address or any other form identifier. So real important to have the right legal description. The offer expiration date, like a lot of, so we're right here on offer expiration date. Like a lot of the terms on this first page, these are fairly brief descriptions of what's needed in these blanks, but most of them have corresponding paragraphs in the subsequent pages on this form. So you can look at that paragraph to get a further explanation of what that item is. For example, for an offer expiration date, if you don't put in a date, the default amount of time for this contract is going to be 2 days after the offer is delivered. And you can withdraw an offer before it is accepted. After it's accepted, you can't withdraw it. You could, you could respond to a counter. So a lot of times people will say, well, how long should I give the seller to respond? Well, you know, remember that when you are putting, say, 2 days, if you put a day, today's the 3rd, and you say, oh, we're gonna give you until Friday the 5th to respond. Well, that should honestly be plenty of time. And anytime you're doing a computation of time, when you start is day 0. So if you're writing on the 3rd that seller has till the 5th to respond, that is 2 days, because today would be day 0, Thursday would be day 1, and Friday would be day 2. And let's see if I can quickly find computation of time. This is an important paragraph to be able to refer to. It's paragraph L. And your deadline for any of these dates that you're setting is going to be 9 p.m. on the last calendar day of the specified period of time. So as in our example, if you say you've got until Friday to respond to our offer, then they have until 9 o'clock. Now, also important is to remember that except for possession, if the last day of your deadline is a Saturday, Sunday, or a legal holiday, then your specified period of time expires on the next day that's not Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. So if you said, oh, buyer, you can have, or seller, you can have till Saturday to respond, well, in reality, the seller would have until Monday. Likewise, any specified period of 5 days or less, unless we're talking about possession date, does not include Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. If it is longer than 5 days, if you're talking about an inspection period that's 10 days, or any contingency that has a deadline that's over 5 days, then you just count straight calendar days. And it doesn't matter if they are Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday, you just straight up calendar days. You don't exclude anything. And it's funny, but I get more questions from experienced agents over computation of time than new agents. So, and it's funny, I'll get this question on the weekend, you know, if my contingency expires today, Saturday, is it really due by 9 o'clock, or do I really have until Monday? I just got this last weekend. And I said, oh, you've got till Monday. Read your, paragraph L on your contract. So if you guys have this under your belt, all the better for you. And also, a lot of times people get confused because other agents won't know how to figure this out. And then they cast doubt into the broker's mind, and they'll say, oh no, our mutual, isn't Thursday, it's really Friday. And then they start to doubt their own powers of logic and will ask me for confirmation. So you can certainly always ask me, for help on this kind of thing, but it's good to have a basic knowledge of your computation of time here in paragraph L. Okay, I'm flipping back up here to our offer expiration date. Once in a while, there might be in a listing a comment like saying, multiple sellers in different states, please allow 5 days for a response, something like that. Maybe it's an estate and there are a number of heirs, they're in different states, different time zones. They might need a little more time to respond. The danger in making your offer expiration date too brief is that the seller may not have adequate time to respond. Maybe they work all day and can only look at this stuff at night. Maybe they're on a business trip and they're out of town and they, have to confer with their spouse before they make a decision. All kinds of variables. Part of it depends too on what time you're sending your offer over. If you send an offer at 9 a.m. and say you've got 1 day, So if we sent that over at 9 AM on Thursday, they would have until 9 PM on Friday to respond with a 1-day response time. And that, that might be enough. But if you're sending it over at 4 in the afternoon or 7 at night, well, 1 day might not be enough. So kind of a rule of thumb is 2 days. Could be a little more, could be a little less. Be careful not to give too much time unless there are those extenuating circumstances, because that giving the seller too much time puts your buyer in a bad position, because it gives the seller or the listing agent really might use your offer to generate other competing offers. And we certainly don't want that kind of competition when we don't need to face it. So if you have a bank-owned property, then they have their own time frames and they have little urgency to respond within these specified expiration times, but those are the exception more than the rule these days. Be in close communication with listing agent, and make sure that your buyer's being treated fairly. Remember that all of your communications, especially, your offer and counter offer and mutual acceptance, all has to be in writing. And really be thinking about this, because there have, it's not that unusual to have a situation where you send over an offer, listing agent responds right away and says, "Oh, thanks for the great offer. I, really appreciate it. I'm sure my seller's going to accept, and I'll be presenting it to him at 6 o'clock tonight when he gets home from work." Great. And so your temptation is to call your buyer and give him the good news, because of course they're very, very anxious to get a response to their offer. And if you go ahead and tell the buyer the good news before you have it in writing, you're really opening yourself up to a lot of heartache, because it could transpire that the time between you send over your offer and the time that they present your offer, they might get another offer, and they might accept that. So nothing is binding until it's in writing. So wait until you get that offer accepted before you tell your buyer, because you sure don't want to have to make that phone call. So I know I told you the seller was going to take the offer, but they didn't after all. And that's a tough conversation to have. What you can tell your buyer is, I've submitted the offer, and it's going to be presented to the seller, and as soon as I know something, you'll know something. It is hard to wait, and you can sympathize with them, but wait until you get it in writing. The other thing to remember when you're sending documents back and forth on a transaction is to always be sure to CC the firm document email address right here. You're of course going to send it to the listing broker, because they're the ones who are going to present it to the seller, but you must CC the firm document email address. And it's important because it's really a record keeping, kind of a storage email, so that we can go back and see when things came in, and it's a way to prove delivery and receipt. So even if you're sending an addendum later on, always CC the firm document email address. I occasionally get the question too, what if the expiration date has passed and then we get a response saying they're going to accept our offer? Well, if you receive an acceptance that occurs after the allotted time, then the offer was technically already terminated, and you would need to draw a line through the original date of expiration, write in a new date, and have the parties initial and date that change. So that's the best way to button it up. And again, remember that the buyer's offer can be revoked anytime prior to receiving written notice of acceptance, and you would use MLS Form 36A for a revocation of that nature. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, buyer, line 2. Here we're gonna put the name of the buyer. You're gonna write their full legal name with the correct spelling and then identify their marital status. You don't want to give them any advice on how they're going to take title. That's a legal practice that really exceeds our authority. That's going to be a matter of both buyer choice and lender preference. So for example, it could be John Smith and Mary Smith, married couple, John Smith and Mary Smith, husband and wife, John Smith, a single person, Mary Smith, a single person, John Smith, a single man, and Mary Smith, a single woman, John and Mary Smith, both unmarried persons. There are different ways to say the same thing. The important thing for you to get in on this line is to make sure you've got their full legal name. I had clients actually argue with me, well, I always sign my name this way, and that's the nickname I've gone by since I was a child, and I don't use Arimathea, I just use Ari, and that I go by Ari. Well, that's fine, but this is, how you're going to be taking title to the property. It's going to be a matter of public record, and you need to have your complete legal name. And by the way, the lender's going to insist on it as well. If you are in any doubt as to what their correct legal name is, you can always ask to take a quick look at their driver's license because it's going to be on there. And it's important to have their marital status on here because we do live in a community property state. So there's spousal interest in real property, and we do need to show what their status is. And the way that the names are written here are going to have to match exactly as they are on the loan documents and exactly as they are on escrow closing documents. So important to have them correct, legal, and complete. By the way, if you have an artificial entity like an LLC or a corporation or some other business entity, or maybe it's a church, then you would need the appropriate authorization for that business entity, like the resolution of the board of directors, or say it's an LLC. You would need the operating agreement for the LLC and also the certificate of formation from the Secretary of State for the LLC. And if you are in doubt as to what you need to provide proof that the person that's signing has a legal authority to do so for the entity, for the LLC or corporation, or for the church, or whatever, you can always ask escrow and title because they will be able to guide you in that. A lot of times people will have pulled prelim title. It might even be attached to the listing. So you can certainly use them as a resource. But if not, again, you're going to want to get that trio that we talked about earlier, the initial information about the property. And so it doesn't cost you anything to order that prelim titling, and it doesn't cost you anything to order a trio either. So that's really, really good information and shows that you're doing your due diligence for your buyer. Okay, we're going to write the seller's name in the blank. Actually, I think it might auto-populate for you if you're in Transaction Desk and you've got the right MLS number included there. Make sure that you do look at that last recorded deed and make sure that the name is the same on the listing as is on the legal or on the last recorded deed. So the deed is what shows who the legal owner of the property is. And that's recorded on every county website, becomes a matter of public record. And it's usually included again in that famous title report that I'm talking about. Oh, if, again, if we see a lot of trusts being entitled to properties these days, so if the seller is a trust and you have an individual signing as a trustee, you're gonna need the portions of the trust that have conveyance language. In other words, that say who can sign on the purchase and sale of any real property. And again, you're gonna need that for your file, and title and escrow is also gonna need it because they need to know how to create their signature lines for their documents to show that the person who's signing has the legal authority to do so. Not so important here to have seller's marital status. That it's gonna be reflected on the deed anyway, so it's already a matter of public record. Okay, line 4, this is a place for you to fill in your tax parcel numbers. And there was a Washington State precedent from back in 1999 that makes the contract unenforceable unless the complete legal description is attached and identified by both parties. So that means you must have a legal description attached as Exhibit A. You can download that from the listing documents that are in the supplement section of the listing and verify it with the help of the title company. And your buyer would need to initial and date that legal description, Exhibit A. And the MLS will fine you if you don't attach a legal description to your listing. And often they've already been initialed by the seller, so that makes it kind of handy. You can download it and include it with your offer, and then it just needs your buyer's initials to make it complete. You also need to list the tax parcel numbers for the property that's being purchased. It's not that uncommon for there to be 2 parcels, and in that case, you of course do need to include both parcels or all parcels that are being conveyed or sold. If you only put one parcel number there, guess what? Your buyer's only buying one. They're not going to get the second one. So make sure that again, you're cross-checking that with the legal description against the information in the listing to make sure that you've got all, inclusive tax parcel numbers. Then we're gonna fill, I think it will auto-populate your address once you put in the MLS number. And so here you're just gonna, if it doesn't, you're gonna write in the address, city, county, state, and zip. Okay, how are we doing? Everybody there?
I've got a question.
Sure.
So, an agent the other day told me that they don't like to put their clients' contact information on, I believe she was saying on the purchase and sale agreement, because she didn't want the other agents to have access to that to then be able to try and advertise to them after the transaction had finished, because she said she had that happen. What are your opinions on that?
Oh, that's a good question. So you do not need to have, I mean, while your clients do have to sign this page, and it's funny, one time I saw an offer had been written and they'd had the buyer initial all the other pages of the contract, but then forgot to have them sign the first page. So that was funny. It had to go back for completion. But so of course you do have to have your buyers sign and date when they're writing an offer. But these other, where you've got the address, the phone number, the email, that is not required for the validity or enforceability of a contract. So that is if your buyers don't want to have their personal information on there, you don't have, or you prefer not to include it, you know, for the aforementioned reasons, it doesn't affect your contract at all. Now, what it does affect, and I can talk about escrow because I worked in escrow for 8 years and I was a closer. So escrow does need your client contact information. There is information they need from each side, the seller and the buyer, about their well, from the seller, they need, you know, HOA contact information. They need authorization for the seller to sign in order for them to get payoffs on their behalf. From the buyers, they may need to coordinate with them to get their earnest money deposited. They want to stay in touch with the buyers to know what any travel plans that they might have, and, you know, be a conduit of information between title and escrow, and sometimes the lender, to keep everything on track and moving toward your goal date of a closing in a, you know, timely fashion. So they've kind of got a checklist that they work at different phases of the transaction, just like you guys. And they do need to have to be able to reach the buyers, to stay in touch with them and get needed information. And they really like to have phone number and email right away. They do collect, at least by closing, a physical address so that they can send any post-closing documents that are owed to the clients. So a way to address that, if you or your buyers don't want to include their personal information on this front page, is leave it off. But then once you are in mutual acceptance and you send over your signed around mutually accepted contract to escrow and say, hooray, we have mutual acceptance. Here is our contract. Please contact my buyer to coordinate deposit of earnest money. It is due in 2 days on the 5th of April. And there in your email is where you can give them your buyer's contact info. Any details you can provide are most helpful. Mr. Buyer, you know, works 9 to 5 in Seattle. Mrs. Buyer works a variable schedule in Sumner, and they currently live in Puyallup. So, I mean, it gives them a little bit of an idea of how we, you know, who should we call? When are they available? And how much time do I have to get this done? But escrow can definitely be your partner in meeting your earnest money deadline. Oh, and by the way, I usually take a break a little before 2 for 15 or so, maybe 20 minutes. A clock hour in Washington is 50 minutes, 50. So it gives us a little leeway. We can have a break in the middle. Okay, go ahead. Does somebody have another question? Okay, let's talk about included items. So this paragraph, number 5, is directly tied to paragraph C, right here. See if I can get it highlighted. On page 2 here of our purchase and sale. So this explains what items are contractually included. So on this item 5, you're going to check the items that are already in the property that your buyer wants to be included in the sale. For example, let's say the client wants the fridge that's in the house, but it's not indicated in the listing as being included. Can you still ask for it? Sure, this is an offer. If your client wants it, then make that offer. And then it's up to the listing agent to discuss that issue with the seller. If there's ever a conflict between what's said on the listing contract and what it says in the purchase and sale, the purchase and sale agreement is always going to rule. So even if somebody says, oh, well, the fridge wasn't included in the listing, but you've got that box checked right here for fridge, and your seller signs off on it, your buyer's entitled to that item. Now, what if they want a fridge, but there's no fridge in the house? Can they check that box and the seller has to provide a fridge? No. It doesn't work that way. They can only ask, on this contract, they can only ask for items that are already in the house. I recently had this come up with a really experienced agent where they asked for something that wasn't in the house. And now I can't remember what the item was, but they wrote it in. But, oh, I know, it was a garbage disposal. So they checked the last box on item 5 and then wrote in garbage disposal. And then they called me when they were, a few days before closing, and they said the seller hasn't installed a garbage disposal, and we asked for that. And I'm like, well, was there one there before that was, need to be replaced or anything? No, we just wanted one. Well, that's not the place to ask for it. So anyway, that was funny because I hadn't really thought about it for quite a while. Be sure that you read your listing carefully, listen to your client carefully, check these boxes carefully, and make sure that your client's wishes are met. And then notice too, this is a fairly recent change, is that most of these items are plural. So if there are 2 fridges in the house and you check that box, that means your buyer's entitled to both fridges. If one is going to be excluded, like your buyer says, oh, I don't want that old fridge in the garage, then you would use an addendum 22D, that's optional clauses, and write in specifically which fridge stays. Refrigerator and kitchen to convey. That means it's going to go with the property. It's going to be conveyed over to the buyer. And then you can say refrigerator and garage goes with seller if you want, specify. And one of the reasons it's important is, and I had this come up, this was some months ago, where the buyer, and this was before they had made this change on with a plurality of these items, is that the buyer, there was a really nice high-end fridge in the kitchen, and there was, an older fridge in the garage. And so the buyers had checked that they were getting a fridge, okay? Well, guess which, they didn't specify which fridge they wanted, or that they wanted both, or, they just checked refrigerator. So they were entitled to a refrigerator. And of course, which one they wanted was the nice new one in the kitchen. Well, guess which one the sellers left for them? That's right. They took the really good one, and then they moved the old fridge from the garage into that spot in the kitchen. Let me tell you, buyers were extremely unhappy with that scenario. So you have to remember how specific you have to be when you're preparing these legal documents in order for your client to be contractually entitled to the items that they want. So that difference between expectation and reality, that's where unhappiness dwells. Also legal liability. So the items that they want, you're going to check the box. Fairly new addition is attached cameras. They kind of updated this a little bit to add something that is frequently seen in properties. Let's go back and look at paragraph 5. I mean, paragraph C that corresponds to item 5. So the things that are usually are to be included. It's mostly appurtenances. Do you guys remember that term from your real estate class? And, things that are permanently attached to the property. And that would be built-in appliances, wall-to-wall carpeting, curtains, drapes, window treatments, windows and door screens, awnings, storm doors and windows. Don't see storm windows too much anymore, but I do see storm doors. TV antennas, any air conditioning, heating fixtures, trash compactor, garbage disposal, fireplace doors, gas logs and lighters, any irrigation fixtures, electric garage door opener. Now that, along with a key, is considered an appurtenance because even though they are not nailed down or installed, they're so specific to the property that they're included in this list. Although I'm not sure, let me see if it says keys or not. But keys are considered an appurtenance and are included. Water heaters, electrical fixtures, lighting fixtures, shrubs, plants, and trees that are planted in the ground. So if they're in a pot, they're considered personal property. If they're planted in the ground, they're considered as part of the real property. And here's a new phrase, all associated operating remote controls and access permissions. So that means if you've got, remote control for your security system, for your ceiling fan, you've got a keyless entry on the garage, you've got an electronic lock on your front door. Access permissions would be the codes, and those must be furnished by the seller to the buyer at or before closing. And then if any of these items are leased, seller shall acquire clear title before closing. That means they have to pay them off. Don't see too many of these anymore. It used to be that a lot of times people would lease security systems, but now with wireless systems, usually they're portable and they go with the seller. Okay, any questions about included items? Okay, we're gonna take a break until 3:10. It's 2:48 now. I'll start talking again at 3:10.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Okay, 70 days. Update on contact issue. You gave me a bunch of them. Question. So I just want Yes.
I know it.
Right, I thought these were like, yes, this is like, do you have your 1099 with this? Like they go.
No, it's already qualified.
You don't have that one either, okay, because that came in a paper form in the mail from the provider, but, right, but I can give you a PDF of that too. Yeah, well, I have some. Okay. No, it is fine,
Okay, I just want to chat with you about this for 3 minutes.
so my only, statement to you is 3:00 on day 3 of Transmittal.
But I'm
So I'm
supposed to talk to
definitely
Jason
going
for
to big post.
so.
Okay, well, I'll be in my office this Sunday, so I can get whenever you're ready. Stick it on my desktop, as there's just other things that I need to clear there first. Perfect. Perfect. All right.
That's okay, it's Debbie McNeil. Hi, I'm good, thank you. I just wanted to thank you for sending Travis my direction. What was his wife's first name? Because, okay, they said Sheena, but I thought I wrote it down Sheena. I wasn't sure if I had it or not. I was just, because I'm gonna getting ready to spend.
All right,
spend a while, but. No, in talking to him and conversing, they don't have,
No, well,
pass right now. And so I told them my first thing was, okay, because there's, they have their first one, they should Chase to go there and get the line of credit for the max that qualify for.
perfect.
And open it and get it closed.
Uh-huh,
Because they
okay.
can't run their planners and think they can have that all the time, because that was stopping. And then that way we'll at least know what they have to work with it. And then, we started talking about, he told me it was like a $700,000 or $800,000 house. And then with the people that they outpainted, because, you know, they've got a very low interest rate right now. But I said, don't panic on this stuff now, because I'd like to sit down and have a roundtable conversation with Jessica and you guys, and we could all just kind of put our heads together. But when I was talking to him, I said, different things to think about or consider is, here you are talking about wanting to build your wealth in real estate by getting more properties. If you took a year and just buy like a duplex, all you have to do is live in it for a year. And then you can turn that into another rental. You have 2 rentals in a 2-year period. And then you want to buy your $800,000. Just different things that is getting mine just getting thinking. And I didn't know if you agree with that or not. I said, well, before I keep talking, I think I really need to share with Jessica. But that was just my thought process initially. They said 2019. Yeah.
It's what? He's sitting in the bosom. Oh, I heard, I don't know. So that's an old fashioned phrase. Oh, man, I never seen it spelled. Oh, so I was like, what word?
Yeah.
But now you see. I was like, what is this? But then I thought I did something wrong.
And that's what I was saying too. So I said, this may be a year down the road, but we've got you thinking, you get that line of credit set up, don't use it and keep saving. But, because you need to have reserves if you're gonna have rental properties. Mhm. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah. 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 No, definitely. No, and I just think, like I said, I love the roundtable conversations, and then we can sit down and show them some numbers without, you know. But do you want me to still tell them to go ahead and do the line of credit? It doesn't hurt even if they decide to sell it. Well, they make decent money. They've only got one collect payment, like 10 months to go. And then they have about 15K in bank cash, that's it. No, they pay their debts off monthly. And that's why I say, I'm not telling you to use it, I'm just telling you to have it in place, so that when we talk plans, this is already done. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, perfect, okay, I will, at least just send him an email, thank him for reaching out, and that, and then after they have a chance to discuss what they really want, then we can set up a time, maybe in a month or so, and go over. it.
When?
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, the Winmore on my computer expired.
Oh, no, just hit enter. Just
Goes away.
until it goes away. That is literally the fix. It is literally the fix. A day sitting here without doing anything, and that was the fix.
Just keep pushing okay.
Oh, okay. I see. That's what I'll share that with them. Just to make sure that just for our conversation, that we have now this in place, so we know when you're ready to jump, we've got another one. Yeah, that can mess everything up really quickly, can't it? Okay, I'll be in touch and I'll keep in touch with you. Thank you, bye-bye. Oh, that's why.
Okay. Okay. Got a name now. Hi, guys, I'm back.
Hey, Susan.
Hey. So, first of all, we have SpongeBob for you. Showing you bright-eyed and innocent as a new agent, and then a little less happy as a buyer's agent, and then a powerhouse listing agent. So you can remember this when you go to your body language strategy class. I love how innocent he looks in this first one. I don't know if you've noticed it. I think this is not just true of other realtors, it's true of everybody, where everybody is just on their phone all the time instead of talking to each other. Constant. It's not just, it used to be just the kids were, texting and their parents were actually talking. Now it's just everybody. what else? I think I have one other one. This one was a good one for new agents, new brokers. This is your brain talking to you when you're trying to go to sleep. And it's like every first agent's nightmare. Did you remember to lock the door of that listing you showed today? Yeah, that's, and then you can't get to sleep. I will say, I've been in the business long enough. I've, heard a lot of horror stories, people, one of my favorite ones is people are, take the key out of the lockbox, open the door, then they are carrying the key around for some reason. And they go out to show their client the deck and then they drop the key. And it drops through the slats in the deck. And then you've got to make that embarrassing phone call to the listing agent, telling them why you can't relock the house because it is now irretrievably under the deck. That's a tough one. Or perhaps you lock the key in the house, you set it down on the front hall table and you're talking away to your client and then you go out the door and pull it shut and then realize it's one of those doors that automatically locked and you have no way of getting back in the house to replace the key in the key box. So my advice on that, on both those scenarios is don't talk to your clients while you're doing that. I used to say to my clients, just stand outside and, admire the curb appeal of the house. I'm going to close up and I will meet you outside after I've locked the door. So then they kind of got the message, oh, we're going to go out to the sidewalk and we're going to look at the shrubs and, I would just have a minute to focus on what I was doing. So I didn't do something silly like lock the key in the house or forget to lock the back sliding door or something like that. So that I could feel sure that I had secured the house properly when I left. It's really, really important because it's a big safety issue. And it's one that, gosh, gets complained about a lot. So another piece of advice for a new broker is, don't rush. Don't be hustling. Your clients can wait a couple minutes, they can reflect on what they've seen, they can chat amongst themselves, or they can check their phone or whatever. But you take the time you need to do your job properly. That causes you a lot less stress. And usually when we're hurrying, that's when we make mistakes anyway, or accidents happen. So I like that one. That meme. Okay. I'm glad you like my meme slogan.
Yeah, these are great, Susan. Thank you.
They're fun to look at. I always laugh out loud when I'm actually looking at these because some of them are more true than others, but it's fun. It's fun to find them for you. Okay. I was trying to pull up on the MLS, I was trying to pull up Express Forms because I wanted to tell you guys something about that. Let me see if I can do that. Oh, I have to log back in. MLS had some login problems this morning. Couldn't get in for a while. Okay, let me see if I can go. Now I have to figure out my share. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, can you guys see the MLS screen I'm showing you right now?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so what I want to tell you, of course, you go into Express Forms and then you put in the form that you're searching for and then you can open it up, right? And look at it. Okay, cool. But what I want to show you is a lot of people don't know this over here where it says manual. And this is true for pretty much every form. What this is it gives you some assistance in filling in the blanks. And it just gives you some notes on step by step how to fill this in. And sometimes it'll even tell you, oh, if you're going to withdraw an offer, then you have to use 36A. If you've got a counter offer, use Form 36. And, just reminds you about how to write in the name, like here, how to write in the name of a buyer couple. If there's only one person, you just write it that way. But it is surprising to me how many people don't know about this. They've never clicked on the manual. And, there are over 100 forms in the statewide system now, in our MLS system. And let me tell you, people, nobody has them memorized. And so it just here's a form with all the numbers. So if you say, oh, I don't remember what to put on number 13. So then you can just go, okay, what does it tell me about number 13? Oh, where are you? Here we go. And then, oh, the date that I put in there is the date they're actually going to, that's how many days after mutual that earnest money has to be delivered. Just a refresher. And in fact, right before, like 5 minutes before the class started, I got a call from an experienced agent saying, I've got a buyer who's making an offer on a property, and I don't know if I should use a 22EF, which is evidence of funds, or if I should use a 22B, which is a contingency, the sale of another property, or if I should use 22A, which is a loan contingency. And the thing is, this happens a lot with experienced agents. Is maybe they haven't written a contingent offer for a while, and they need to get walked through the process. And they just say, hey, exactly that. I haven't written one of these for a while. Can you walk me through it? I know some of the forms have changed. I need some help. Sure. Actually, it was probably 10 till 2 when she called. And I talked to her for like 8 minutes, and I said, we can talk some more, but I've got to go because I've got a class starting in 2 minutes. And she said, I think I've got it. I said, okay, call me back if you need more help. So don't feel bad about asking about how to fill out forms, because you are not the only one doing it. Everybody needs help. But if you have this as a little extra tool for yourself that you can read this over and get some tips on, oh, you can't remember how to fill out that one paragraph, the answer might be under the manual right here. So that's a good little tipster for you guys. Okay, now let me see if I can figure out how to go back to my other share. Share. Go back to 21. Share. Okay, now can you guys see 21 again?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about purchase price. So buyers are often going to ask you how much they should offer on the property. You don't want to just tell them a price right off the bat. That could come back and bite you. So what you're going to do is do a CMA, market analysis for the property, share it with your buyer client, maintain a copy for your file. And then after they've made their decision with the assistance of your market analysis, and to some extent their, desire for the property, write that price in on line 6. Now, this corresponding paragraph is going to be right here, paragraph A. And this is important to read over because it says that the buyer is going to pay the seller the purchase price, including earnest money, in cash, unless otherwise specified in this agreement. This said buyer says they've got enough money to do this. And be careful about wiring your funds, people. So this emphasizes how important it is that if your buyer has any contingent funds that they're relying on, or any funds they're relying on to make their purchase, like a loan, a home equity line of credit, maybe even a family gift. You know, it's important that you have the correct addendum that says this offer is contingent on the buyer getting this money. And if they can't get it, if their loan's denied, if Aunt Susie doesn't send the earnest money, we don't get our funds as expected, then we can exercise the contingency and terminate and get out with our earnest money. Otherwise, if you don't have that contingency protection and the buyer defaults, in other words, they can't perform in their contract, they can't buy the property because they don't have the money, and you don't have a contingency, then their earnest money is going to be sacrificed. It's the amount of liquidated damages. So just be aware that the boilerplate language here in the purchase and sale says buyer's paying cash money unless it's otherwise agreed. And then this is where you would add addenda. We'll get there. And by the way, the main addendum that you're going to use is financing, because that covers all the different kinds of loans that people will get. And if you just simply want to disclose, oh, this is a cash buyer, there's an evidence of funds form to use to disclose the source of those funds, but it doesn't give them a contingency. It doesn't give them doesn't protect their earnest money. How do I get that to go away? I don't know. All kinds of, that's where you'd select any of your addenda. Okay, purchase price. Again, one more thing here, because I have had clients when I was in escrow, especially younger people who have never written a check before, maybe. And so you're going to write in the dollar amount in numbers, and then you're going to write it out in words, kind of like you're writing a check. So say it was 500,000, 500,000, period, and then you'd write 500,000 after that. And it is shocking how many times I have seen somebody write the dollar amount here and then the dollars in words, and they don't match. So have them match, people. That would be the same. Don't create confusion in your contract. Okay, line 7, earnest money. This is tied to paragraph B of the second page of the purchase and sale. And this is a big paragraph because it's not, there are a lot of rules governing earnest money. A lot of times buyers think, oh, earnest money is just going to be held in trust or in escrow to show good faith that I'm not going to change my mind about buying the property. And if my financing or inspections fall through, then I'll just get my money right back. Well, this is not entirely true. Based on that belief, a buyer might be at the escrow office with their hand out waiting for their check as soon as their financing falls through, and it just doesn't work that way. Under the rules, they would have to provide the appropriate paperwork, either a Form 50, which is authorization to disperse earnest money, or a Form 51, which is a rescission, signed by both the buyers and the sellers, or it would have to go through the interpleader process in a court. And that could take months. So in this paragraph, B, it explains that if the seller stonewalls, the buyer should submit a demand for the earnest money to escrow. They're acting as basically trustee for the money. And the closing agent has to deliver notice of the demand to the other party within 15 days. We're right down here on line 25 now. And if the other party does not object to the demand within 20 days, That's our next line. Of the closing agent's notice, closing agent shall disperse the earnest money to the party making the demand within 10 days of the expiration of the 20-day period. And escrow has a whole process in place for this demand and release timeframe. So if the seller does send an objection to the demand of the buyer for the earnest money refund, then escrow would initiate the interpleader process, and they may deduct $750 for the costs. And it also states here that if a party doesn't sign the rescission when they're legally required to do so, that's considered a breach of contract. And this allows the buyer to sue the seller if the seller is obstinate about releasing the earnest money to the buyer when they're contractually required to do so. Reminder too, that in this interpleader action, which is essentially a lawsuit between the parties, whoever wins gets the loser to pay all their court costs and legal fees. So it can be very expensive and cost a lot of time as well as money. Many times, the amount of damages is going to exceed the amount of the earnest money. So negotiation and compromise should be your first action when the parties cannot agree on the distribution of the earnest money in the case of a contingency being exercised or a default. Now, do you have to have earnest money on every contract? Anybody know?
No.
That's what I was gonna say, no.
Very good. Yeah, thanks, guys. You guys are awesome. No, you don't have to have earnest money for the, validity of the contract. It serves two purposes. One is to say to the seller, hey, I'm really serious about buying your property and here's some money to show that I'm really sincere or earnest about it. And then the other function that it serves is liquidated damages. So again, if the buyer defaults, wants out of the transaction, doesn't have any contingencies to exercise, then the earnest money is what would go into the seller's pocket. But it's not necessary to have it. A lot of times in family deals, people don't care so much about earnest money. I will say, if you guys think about it, like if you were selling a property and you were asking $750,000 for it, and you got a contract and the buyer said, oh, I want to buy your property and I'll give you $500 in earnest money. How serious would you feel about that buyer? Do you think they'd be pretty serious? They've got not much skin in
Absolutely.
the game, right? What, Zach?
I said absolutely. It's more of a kind of like something that all agents have kind of adopted, or the industry's kind of adopted to say, hey, this works.
Yeah. Well, it does have its place. I'll say that. The other thing I want to, and you most of the time do see it, and buyers will ask you, how much earnest money should I put down? There's no rule, but rule of thumb, kind of what you often see is about 1%, but no requirement. So it's kind of up to them. Remember to tell them that this is the amount of liquidated damages. If something goes wrong, this is what's going to get released to to the seller.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
What if they don't put earnest money down and there's a problem and they have to, they don't have any liquidated, I'm on earphones. They don't have any liquidated money to give to the seller, then they just have to sue them?
Well, then they're free to, there's no. It depends on what the reason they're defaulting.
Oh, okay.
But basically, if there are any contingencies on the contract, a seller's gonna wanna see some earnest money.
Okay.
If it's like cash deal, we're closing in a week, some buyer, sellers aren't necessarily gonna care about having earnest money for that extra week. So it
Okay.
kind of depends on the situation, but technically, if you have no earnest money down and a buyer defaults, the transaction terminates and everybody goes their merry way.
Oh,
Do you
okay,
have
thank you.
Do you have a good example of when you might not use a earnest money?
Grandpa's moving to assisted living. He wants to sell his house to grandson. Long-term tenant wants to buy the house they've been renting for 15 years from their landlord who's retiring and moving to Florida.
Yeah.
There's an empty lot between two neighbors who are best friends, and one of them wants to buy the lot from the other neighbor because they wanna get a pony and have more room for the pony to graze. They're out in Roy or somewhere, so, friends, family, that kind of situation where they're not really caring much about, they know the other party, they know they're serious about the purchase and they're not concerned about getting, shafted, I guess. Or they don't feel the need to have some money in reserve to protect, their interests.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Just a reminder, you are always going to, most of the time, we're gonna say, the default, I think, is 2 days. Let me look at the paragraph. Yeah, so if you don't put anything there, it's gonna be 2 days after mutual acceptance if not filled in. That's if you have this kind of term in your, in your document, it's called the default. If you leave it blank, it's gonna default to what's in the document. Now, you could put it sooner or you could put it later. This is a conversation to have with your buyer, because you need to know, where are the funds? Are they liquid? In other words, can you write a check for that? Is it money in your account? Do you need to move some money out of, say, a brokerage account or an investment? You need to sell some stock. Are you waiting for Aunt Susie to send you a check from Lansing, Michigan to, cover your earnest money? Is your dad wiring the money from China for you? I mean, all these things have happened. So, it may not be realistic for them to get their earnest money deposited in 2 days. The other thing is, they've got a lot of different ways to deposit earnest money, and this is kind of why it makes sense to get escrow's help in this. So if it's closing at least 10 business days after mutual, they can use, I'm sorry. Yeah, they can use a personal check for earnest money. They can use a cashier's check. They can wire funds in. They can drop a check off. They can use a money order. Escrow can pick up an earnest money check from a business. They can't send a courier to a personal residence, though. So you see, we've got lots of options here. And sometimes, agents get in the middle of this process, and honestly, it's easier just to have escrow talk directly to the buyer. Remember to give them their phone number and email address so they can get going on this, and figure out what's going to be the handiest. I remember I would have agents say, well, it's just, they work all day and there's no way they can, hand deliver an earnest money check. That's just impossible, blah, blah, blah. So I would call the client and say, here are some options. Well, we had an email we sent out with, here are all your options. Then I'd call them and say, what's going to work for you? And they'd be like, oh, I see you have an office in Bellevue. Well, I work, like 6 blocks from that office. I can drop it off in my lunch hour. Awesome. So problem solved. But sometimes it's a little more complicated. Maybe you're sending them an overnight UPS label that they can print out and they can drop it in UPS and we'd have it the next day. Also important to have that buyer contact info because a lot of title companies now have portals they'll set up for the clients to use during the course of the transaction where they can send and receive messages and securely send or share documents like wiring instructions. Otherwise, they have to send wiring instructions via encrypted email or hand deliver them in person. They're very, very careful about those wiring instructions. So, you know, talk to your buyer about when it's going to be, say, hey, you know, you can wire funds in, you can, you know, drop off a check at escrow, or we can make some other kinds of arrangements, you know, for escrow to help you get that deposited. How many days do you think that would take? You know, you need a few days for that. The reason this is really important, this is a critical contractual term. If your buyer does not deposit their earnest money on time, seller can just say, forget it. I'm terminating. Buyer failed to deposit their earnest money. And by the way, since they made their offer, I've got another buyer and I'm moving on. So your buyer could lose the whole deal just by being a day late on the earnest money. You don't want that to happen. So get a
What's the max,
realistic, huh? Go ahead.
what's the maximum days on
There's
depositing the earnest money?
there's no maximum. But if you're closing in a month, I sure wouldn't put 30 days down for for earnest money. And I will say
But you
that
have to, you have to write it in the contract.
well, if
Does
you
it have
don't
to be
write it down, it's gonna be 2. And if you don't deposit it after 2 days, then your seller can terminate it. But I would say you typically see between 2 and 10 days on earnest money. So anything within that range is pretty reasonable. But you know, if you say I'm gonna deposit my earnest money and in 10 days and you're gonna close in 2 weeks, you know, that's a little weird. Usually people will get
Sooner the
smarter
better.
down right away. I will caution you about, sometimes people kind of look for anything they can do to sweeten the offer when they're in a competitive situation. Don't release the earnest money to the seller. If there is some problem later on, it's a lot harder to get the earnest money back when it's already in the seller's pocket versus being in escrow.
I thought it has to be in escrow.
It does initially, but sometimes people will say earnest money to be released to seller after passing the inspection or upon a satisfactory
Oh.
appraisal, or even at mutual acceptance. If they're competing with several other offers, they're looking for a way that, you know, is gonna, something that's gonna
Right.
sweeten the deal for the seller. But don't do that, because it makes it a lot harder for your buyer if there's a problem later. So talk to your buyer about, you know, the availability of the funds for the earnest money and put that in. The other thing is if something changes, like, I've had this happen, you know, I've had a buyer call and say, we had a sudden death in the family, we gotta fly out of state on the red eye tonight. I'm not gonna get my earnest money in on time. You know what, you get on the horn and you say to the listing agent, family emergency, you know, this is what's happening. I'm gonna get you an addendum over to change the delivery date of the earnest money to accommodate my seller's or my buyer's emergency and get that fixed so that your, you know, listing agents in the know and they can communicate to the seller that the buyer just hasn't flaked out and not deposited their earnest money, but they had another priority and they're gonna address it just as soon as they can. And you are correct, closing agent is always gonna hold the earnest money. DOL has many rules about holding other people's money and it's gotten both hazardous and complicated. So most of the firms in Washington do not have trust accounts to hold funds anymore. We certainly do not. So you're never gonna check this box because we don't have the capacity to do that. So closing agent means escrow. And you're always gonna check this box. Don't use a promissory note. If they need more time to deposit their earnest money, you're gonna write a longer time frame here, or you're gonna amend that with an addendum. And then finally moving to item 8 here. I can't remember if I usually do 8 on this class. Yes. You're always gonna check forfeiture of earnest money. You don't want the seller to decide what they get if your buyer defaults. You only want this earnest money to be what's at risk for your buyer. Okay. We have time for questions, if anybody has any.
With the contract earlier, you said I think Logan asked, if you do want to add that more information about your buyer, do you write an NA or a line in that bar, or
What do you mean, like
can
here
you
where
leave it
they're
blank?
for their email and phone number, you
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
You can just leave it blank.
Oh, okay. So you can leave some part of the contracts blank.
Well, you can, but again, you have to look at those corresponding paragraphs and see what the boilerplate language is, because you might be tied into a deadline that you're not aware of. So generally in a contract, I don't recommend leaving blanks. Does anybody remember how many days you have for expiration if you don't write anything in?
2.
Very good, it is 2.
Two.
And earnest money? Also,
Would be-
Everything's 2 unless you give them a date, right?
that's true. Yes, this is true, at least on this part of it. Okay. But it can vary, and so, make it clear and
I mean, it is better to write like maybe NA if you do want to write anything, just to make sure,
yes,
you don't leave anything blank in the contract.
agreed. And believe it or not, there are some people that don't do email. I mean, they might be older than me, but I have had some people who don't do that. Once in a while, you've got somebody who kind of lives off the grid, and it doesn't have to be just somebody old. Or sometimes people don't want to give out their personal phone number. That's okay. I don't know hardly anybody that has fax numbers, at least personal individuals that have, fax numbers anymore. We do have a fax number, but I honestly haven't seen a fax for so long. I wouldn't even know how to get one anymore.
The reason I was asking, because I remember my designated broker in Kansas, she used to say, always put a line on it, or put an NA, do not leave anything blank.
Okay, I like
But
that
I don't know if that
person.
was the rules, or.
I like that person a lot. I like that advice. That's good advice. Yeah, leave no room for doubt. Okay, here's another meme for you. When you're at inspections all day in a house with no AC, you're hungover and the buyer's dad is there. Well, I have done inspections with the buyer's parents there, but I didn't have the other 2 things happen. Anybody know what movie that's from?
Uh-uh.
Oh, I think it's
Yeah.
Ghostbusters?
I think it's from Airplane.
Airplane.
That looks like
Anybody
it.
confirm that?
I think so. It's from Airplane.
Is that from Airplane?
Thank you,
Is that
Gerard.
from Airplane?
That's an old movie. It's a really old movie.
My husband said Airplane.
Oh, okay, right on. Now we know. And there's one more. You're in a nightmare deal when your client starts answering the phone saying, "What happened now?"
I don't want that.
Yeah, one thing that's helped me is when I'm talking to my clients, I like, well, actually, this is true, you know, and you can apply this a number of ways. But tell people what you can do, not what you can't do,
Mhm.
you know, first. If they say, oh, we wanna just stop back into the house and, you know, measure the master bedroom for curtains, you know. Instead of saying, oh, you can't do that without an appointment because the seller's still living there, you say, oh, I can certainly call and make arrangements for a time for you to stop in and do that. That's a great idea. And I know you're anxious to get going on, you know, getting your fabric selected for your new curtains or something like that. See the difference? Instead of saying, oh, you can't just drop in. You know, you say, oh, we can do that, but then you tell them how to do it, right?
It has been a long time in coming. About 2 weeks ago, there was a final environmental impact statement released.
I'm getting,
that provides a number of alternatives for recovering
like part of
bears in
another
the
class or
Cascades.
something.
In about 2
Yeah,
weeks from
I
now,
think
the final
the
record of
I'm not sure
decision
about
will
that.
be
there's some
Anybody else
issued.
TV playing, Patricia.
Somebody's got their
Oh,
TV
okay.
on or something.
Here.
I didn't know you could hear it through my earbuds, but I guess it's my microphone that's on my chest here. Sorry.
Oh, okay,
My husband's
Yeah.
watching it. I'll turn it off, sorry.
okay. No worries. Okay, well, anything else you guys can think of that you want to ask me while you've got me? Okay, well, you guys have been a great class. I hope you learned something and feel a lot more confident about using the purchase and sale agreement. Be sure and utilize that practice purchase and sale and just practice filling in the blanks. And let me know if you have questions. You can always work with your mentor and coach as well to get more proficient in this so that you really feel comfortable with the forms. I sure look forward to seeing you guys next time for part 2 of purchase and sale. And in the meantime, class dismissed. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. I enjoyed your class. See you next week.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
great. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Hey, Susan, can I steal 2 minutes of your time?
Oh, sure.
I
Thank
just
you,
wanted
Susan.
to,
Have a good one.
I just want to ask a quick question, but I didn't want these guys to have to stay on and listen because it doesn't really pertain to this exactly.
Okay.
But so obviously new agent. My mom had just bought a house, and I'm not asking for any legal advice, but she had gone through everything. Turns out the people that she bought a house from were working with flippers, the agent was. And so they had made an older house look really nice. They had a drain that was installed incorrectly, and it's cost my mom probably like, I think altogether it's been about $30,000. She's
Oh,
had
no.
Yeah, she's had to get a lawyer involved, and she sent them a notice, but she's worried about moving forward because she doesn't want to have to pay the lawyer fees and then only get enough compensated for, because the lawyer fees are probably going to be about $15,000. And so
Oh,
again, not asking for legal advice, but would she be guaranteed possibly if she did take them to court and won everything, would they have to pay for her lawyer fees as well, or is that up in the air?
I don't know that it's guaranteed, but that is usually what happens. I think that would really be a question for her attorney is,
Or the
what are
attorney.
my chances of having your fees as well as, the costs I've incurred covered by the other party, if I win. And,
Okay, okay.
kind of qualify her chances a little bit. Well,
Yeah.
while, it certainly sounds like she's in the right, sometimes it's hard to predict how these things are going to come out. And I think generally my philosophy is hope, prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. But it sounds like she's doing everything that she can and having engaged legal counsel to protect her interests and pursue compensation, certainly seems appropriate to me. So I hope she does win and gets reimbursed for everything and has her attorney costs and court costs covered as well.
Yeah, it was a pretty crappy situation, but I was like, well,
Wow.
might as well ask since I'm getting into this, it would have.
Sure, yeah,
The agent she's working with was somebody that I've worked with in the past, and so he's been awesome through the whole entire situation. But it really put into perspective, like, oh man, these are the kinds of things you really have to deal with. There's nothing that he could have really done outside of taking a shower at the house.
yeah.
and just seeing how that played out. But yeah, anyways, thank you for your words of wisdom.
Oh, sure. Well, I wish her the best of luck. I hope it comes out. Let me know how it comes out.
I will, absolutely. Well, you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, you too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.